Hold up, I ain't trying to stump, man, but the Yeezys jumped over the jump, man. I be in and out of arenas like I'm Scottie Pippen.
Left my elbow in the pot, a la Vince Carter.
Bitch, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym?
James Harden with the range on me, nigga, way back.
Coach, they won't knock me off my pivot, get it.
Been flowing stupid since Vince Carter was on some through the legs arm and a hoop shit.
And you could live through anything if magic made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, now you do.
Yes, sir. We are back. Round of applause for yourselves. This is your guy, Marcellus Ease. We got some good stuff on the docket for today. We're going to be on more of the business tip, but it's going to be some great stuff. As we're seeing more and more NBA teams get sold and the media rights just keep going up and up and up, where is truly the next money growth in sports? We're going to hear from Brett McCormick at Sports Business Journal as he does a deep dive into the real estate opportunities and why teams like the Atlanta Braves, the Golden State Warriors, the Texas Rangers have all began to set up an ecosystem around their arenas, and how that infrastructure is also attracting many politicians, especially in the greater areas of a lot of these metro cities. Again, in this episode, we're going to focus more on the business side of sports, as in the final segment, we'll take a look at the nuances surrounding NBA contracts historically. We'll hear from guys like Spencer Haywood, who had to take the NBA all the way up to the Supreme Court because of collusion. With him winning his lawsuit, it opened things up 20 years later for guys like Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant to come into the league fresh out of high school. So we're going to do a deep dive and continue hearing from players down the line like Jim Jackson in the early 90s, where him, along with his agent, the guy who basically helped LeBron James and Rich Paul set up Klutch Sports, their whole overall blueprint came from this agent, in which him and Jim Jackson end up fighting the league and almost taking them to court over the same collusion. And because they end up getting their way and winning the battle, we seen in 1995 the NBA introduced the rookie deals that we see today, where young players coming in are pretty much capped. And finally, very similar to Jim Jackson, we'll hear from Chris Webber, as he uniquely signed a deal as a first overall pick in which he could opt out after year 2 and have full control of where he wanted to be. So ever since then, the league has been putting parameters in place to make sure things like this would never happen again. So as the NBA enters into their brand new lucrative television deal, the league structurally will begin to change and almost resemble an NFL style model where all the teams are almost at the same playing level and they all participate almost equally to a degree in that revenue sharing. And while that transition is happening, there will be opportunities for owners to take advantage of to distinguish themselves and create a new revenue that they don't necessarily have to share with other teams. This is where real estate comes into play. We heard Mark Cuban make numerous remarks of how NBA ownership today really means an investment portfolio for real estate, as the possibilities of that are going to be a lot higher than teams relying on local media revenue. Again, all the NBA teams will be sharing the national NBA revenue, but on the local side, due to the Diamond Sports bankruptcy, over a quarter of the league had lost their local TV revenue. Teams like the Utah Jazz, Phoenix Suns, Dallas Mavericks, they've now collaborated with baseball as well as NHL teams to form their own packages to get their games out to their fans. So in this segment, we'll hear from Brett Comack at Sports Business Journal as he touched base on this topic of how sports teams are moving into real estate and also how they're moving away from dense inner city areas into suburbs, because new arenas at the same time look good on a politician's resume. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
You know, real estate is such a long-term play that it's, I think it's more of like another asset class for sports owners. It's another kind of consistent source of revenue. If you think about during the pandemic, the Braves, played games without fans, but they still had rent checks coming in from the people that live in the apartments. And there was a lot of pro sports teams that were not getting checks from apartment renters. So that's kind of like the worst case scenario, but it is another steady income stream. And I think one of the most appealing aspects of it for owners is they don't have to share it with anybody else. So, mixed use development revenue so far has stayed out of collective bargaining agreements. I'd be really interested to see if that remains so, because again, I think the players could make the case that the reason people come to the venues that are now the anchors of these developments is to see the players. But for now, they don't have to share that revenue. And
Ironically, with the NBA entering into their new TV deal, they've opened up the opportunities for players to gain ownership in certain companies that they used to not be able to participate. I believe liquor, cannabis, and even gambling companies, they can now get sponsorship deals in which they get paid in percentages of ownership or just even stock options.
in terms of the top 4 or 5 leagues, I'm not sure if it'll replace media money. I think that depends on, how streaming and cord cutting and those types of things impact those deals. But, in one of the interesting things about mixed use development that I've been covering is these are starting to pop up around different types of facilities, women's sports facilities, college athletics, training facilities in some cases. So with college and women's sports, you could absolutely see it replacing and surpassing media money. The Kansas City Current, which have been really on the leading edge of women's sports in terms of real estate, opened what is considered the first women's specific pro sports stadium, is also developing real estate on the riverfront down there in Kansas City. So, they are gonna, I think, show that there's places where this can work that don't have to be NFL stadiums, that don't have to be Major League Baseball stadiums. As long as there's some sort of kind of like hub that draws foot traffic, outside the people that live there, I think, it can be something that works. So that's the other thing. It's probably like more flexible than broadcasting money and streaming money, because, you can sort of make this work in different ways and at different levels. So, and that's why the Braves have been the paradigm for this in the last, I think, 8 years. When I went there, one thing that struck me was, they have there's a lot of apartments around this kind of middle corridor that is commercial and then, ends in the ballpark. The only like flags or banners or displays that I saw on the railings of these apartments that all face inward was the Braves. And so I asked them about that because I live in Charlotte, where, we're a city of transplants. And so if you walk down our similar kinds of areas, you'll see 50 different colleges and every pro sports team except for the Charlotte ones. Like, why is it only Braves? And they were like, well, when you sign a lease here, there is a stipulation in the bottom that says you can only hang Braves banners over the railing. And I thought that was pretty sort of insidious, but also demonstrates the control that teams and owners can create in their environment, which is something that in a lot of cases, especially.
And that same level of control does equate to dollars, as we see the Golden State Warriors, the way they have that ecosystem around Chase Center. They're collecting commercial rents. Even Uber moved into one of their commercial office spaces. And that's revenue, once again, that's not shared by other NBA teams. They can't touch that. And the Warriors also have an outside area with a huge screen where they're able to monetize even when the team is not there. Let's say they have an away playoff game. They can now sell tickets. Steve Ballmer with the Clippers has the same setup in his brand new stadium. So when it comes to owners not necessarily wanting to rely on just a revenue sharing pot, desperation does breed innovation. And there will be plenty of new opportunities.
If you think about urban arenas or urban stadiums, you could have homelessness, or there could be graffiti, or boarded up businesses or whatever. It's harder to control that environment because you don't own that land. And so that's one reason why the Braves, have been studied so heavily across the industry, is they've created this environment that they really control. Nobody is drinking Pepsi in there. That is a Coca-Cola safe zone. The amount of teams that are studying this idea is substantial. So mixed use isn't exactly brand new. I mean, you had LA Live open in 1999, where we're kind of in a 2.0 phase of mixed use. So the thinking around it has gotten much more sophisticated. The real estate industry has gotten much more involved than they had been in the past. You're seeing a lot of teams partner with major real estate developers. Like, for example, the Browns are working with Lincoln Property, which is one of the largest real estate companies in the U.S.
Also, the same people that own the Cleveland Browns now own the Milwaukee Bucks. And the previous owner came in not only for the team, but they had a vision for that whole downtown area as it's been revamped. Same thing in Oklahoma City.
The Tampa Rays project that fell through was with Heinz, which is another one of these massive national companies. And then there's kind of been there's sort of two paths you can take now. LA Live was the entertainment district, so the sports and entertainment district. You could kind of think of like Texas Live, like around Arlington, where the Cowboys and the Rangers play, would be. Now they have added apartments, but that I think developed originally as an entertainment district. And then the other way is kind of more in the neighborhood direction and trying to create a community. And this has been done less, and I think it's probably harder, but is sort of what the Braves did. The 1901 project around United Center in Chicago is the owners of the Bulls and the Blackhawks have stressed that they're creating a neighborhood, not a hub with an arena and like a Dave and Buster's or whatever. They're expecting to have residents and parks and the New York City Football Club.
Speaking of New York City, James Dolan is one of the NBA owners that has contested this new television deal because he doesn't want to participate in an NFL style model as far as sharing revenue. And with the owners now getting more into real estate, this is where the avenues open up for him to gain additional revenue while at the same time not having to worry about sharing that money with small market franchises like the Charlotte Hornets.
So I think the trend has been around, but the sophistication is changing. Teams are understanding, better how they can do this. The industry around it is changing and growing. There's more companies and more people that are getting involved and advising, and they're seeing like the opportunity. I mean, another thing that's a huge aspect of mixed use development is sponsorship. So you can make sponsorships more valuable. You can put naming rights on literally everything, an amphitheater, the yoga classes, the signage can be bigger and different. And it could be sponsorships that emanate from the team and the venue that sort of spread outward. So it's kind of like a lot of the revenue lines of a venue, but just every day of the year, and then some additional ones, like renters, for example. The other thing that the Braves did that was so unusual and that was trend-setting is they opened the stadium and a large portion of the mixed-use development at the same time. So a lot of times the stadium comes online and then the mixed-use development, the great renderings that you see when it's built out, that's like a 25-year horizon. So, maybe you would see that in your lifetime or whatever. So what they did was they opened it at the same time. And so the teams that are moving from the inner city to suburbs are thinking of the same thing. This is what the Bears have done by acquiring Arlington Park. And so they want to have aspects of the development open at the same time as the stadium to kind of immediately start receiving the benefits of the mixed use.
And also, we got to factor in the gambling dynamic. As many other states continue to legalize it, eventually these owners want to set themselves up where they have their arena, they have commercial real estate next to it, they have a casino where fans can fly in from all over the world, stay in a hotel next to the arena, then go to the casino, and then go to the game. That eventually is the ideal setup. And just as Brett spoke about the Atlanta Braves sort of being the blueprint of what teams want their mixed-use stadiums to even look like, the Dumont family that purchased the Mavericks from Mark Cuban came into the NBA with this intention.
The other trend that I think plays into that is this trend of teams sort of pitting submarkets against each other. And so I think, Cleveland and Chicago are great examples of this. DC is another good example of this, what Monumental Sports tried to do. You've got communities that, maybe have a wealthy tax base and have some space and, potentially a mayor or, city council that's really motivated to try to attract the team. And they're kind of competing against the city. Like it's like, come out here to the burbs. It's clean. There's room, you've got space. It's where your fans are.
This almost happened with two NBA teams, the Washington Wizards, they almost went to Virginia, and also the Philadelphia 76ers, they're willing to move across the river in Camden, New Jersey.
And that's true for some sports, less true for others. But yeah, it's more palatable for the teams. They take less of a reputational hit, by totally leaving the city. I mean, I'm here in Charlotte, where the Hornets really have not recovered since they moved to New Orleans and came back as the Bobcats. So that really damages a franchise and is tough to bounce back from, even if you're welcomed in the new city. You have to start all over. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets, are probably still building a fan base, 12, 13 years after moving from New Jersey. So, yeah, I think that they're seeking space so that they can pop up the stadium and the development at the same time. And then in some cases they're getting financing or support or, easier zoning laws or more, more cooperation from these communities that are, I would say, punching above their weight in a lot of cases. And I think something that'll be interesting to watch is, when I looked at Brook Park's credit rating on Fitch last year, it was strong. It was like an A. I don't remember what the ranking is, but it was really a really good credit score that basically said they stay within their limits, And the weird thing about the Browns is they're moving within Cuyahoga County, so they're not moving to a new county. And so the county has looked at this like, we're not going to get new tax revenue, so like, what is in it for us? And you can see that because the Browns went straight to the state. They kind of just bypassed the county and they've gone to the state for money. So some of these communities, I think, could be in danger of like biting off more than they can chew. Like we'll see. I don't know if that'll work out all the time, but that definitely happened in Rock Hill with the Panthers when they tried to build the training facility down there, and the city of 60,000 just over the South Carolina border couldn't float the bonds. Like they couldn't do the bonds because they were at a junk rating. So the submarket thing is still kind of playing out. It worked in Atlanta because they found a wealthy area, but and they're owned by Liberty Media, so money really probably wasn't an object. But yeah, that's a new trend, and I'm kind of curious to see like if it has like some sustainable legs. It's definitely a market by market thing. A good example is the city of Oklahoma City voted to pay for the majority of a new arena for the Thunder, and that's probably a scenario where they could have moved to another city. I mean, they have the Thunder because they left Seattle. They were the Supersonics. You had votes that failed in Arizona with the Coyotes. Kansas City one was kind of a debacle. I think that was like a pretty poor political campaign that they ran there by sort of weighing down the Chiefs with the Royals. To some degree, they did it together, which was kind of like an odd approach, especially if I was the Chiefs, like you said, coming off of so much success. And then at the same time, you've had like record public money contributions in Tennessee and Buffalo, that were over $1 billion in Tennessee's case. So it really varies by market. It doesn't really track politically. Like it's could be Democrats or Republicans. Republicans who you might think of as more fiscally conservative, have been approving this kind of money. And then the state of New York, the governor had kind of an interest, I think, in Buffalo, and so that helped them get into the state budget. And that's one of the things that I found really interesting covering this is how central politics is to it. I mean, that's also kind of a wild card that varies from place to place. In terms of like the Rays, for example, that deal that they had worked on for 2 or 3 years fell apart after the hurricane came through and ripped the roof off of the Tropicana field. And then at the same time you had an election, and then a different group of county commissioners came in and were much more skeptical of the deal that had been struck. And I mean, that was some of the worst timing ever. That deal seemed like it was over the line. I had written about it as if it was essentially finished, and then a act of Mother Nature, and then a election, and it crumbled. And now that team's probably going to be sold and maybe build a venue somewhere else in Tampa. So yeah, I mean, the politics of it is very unpredictable. I would say, like in DC, for example, you had a mayor that was kind of I don't know, her public image was almost on its knees in terms of nearly losing Monumental, and then I don't know, like a year later, she's she's got Monumental sorted out and is going to bring the Commanders back to RFK. And you know, whether the public should be paying for you know, the venues of teams owned by billionaires or not, you know, I'm not sure. I think probably not, but it also seems to be something that these public officials really like to put on their resume, and that if it falls through, it can kind of hurt them. I mean, I think the governor of Virginia, you know, his credibility took a bit of a hit with the way he tried to ram that deal through, you know, and I think the way he tried to do it actually made people, you know, that he needed to work with bristle at the fact that, like, well, you tried to ram this through without like consulting us, so like, screw you, you know. There's a lot of like, screw you, this is personal, that comes into these like massive deals, and the politics is really unpredictable. I mean, I actually think this is like one of the big fundamental threats for live sports attendance is the cost of attending, because on one hand you have this like insatiable appetite for premium, and you know, people will pay whatever to get closer and to get more access and to have a better experience, and you know, will pay top dollar for premium. But on the other hand, it does feel like the gap is like widening, kind of the almost like the income inequality thing is like really manifesting on sports, because yeah, to just go to a game is so expensive. I rarely, if ever, will eat at a game, because you don't really know the quality of the food that you're going to get, but you do know that it's going to be expensive and potentially like ridiculously expensive.
And also, the average fan is going to get hit twice as hard, because now just going to the games and actually being a fan of the on-court product or just the overall on-the-field product is no longer enough. It looks like the tide is heading towards the direction of going to a game now is almost like going to a resort. It's a whole experience. You checking into the hotel, you play some games at the casino, you hit up a couple restaurants within the same property owned by the same franchise, and then the last stop would be you actually going and experiencing the game. That right there is a game changer. Long gone are the days of just a diehard fan going out there, might get a jersey, but just want to get a couple of beers and just watch the game and just experience the product and just go home. They're slowly turning that fandom into a whole vacation experience. They have everything set up. You can get your drink, your food, your souvenirs. Everything is there in that ecosystem, and there's money to be made. And you can't be surprised by it. It's part of our capitalistic ecosystem. Don't be surprised if this ends up working and teams begin to have their own airlines.
When I've talked to CEOs of the concessionaires, this is something they're like really worried about. The price elasticity, you know, like going to the grocery store is so expensive. So like, how am I going to be able to go to a sporting event if I have kids? And the B, that this kind of run on premium post COVID, that at some point it's going to expire. And I think they're like really caught between trying to max out and get the most out of that, and also like be ready for if it just like drops off a cliff, which it hasn't yet.
And it's a possibility that could happen. The NBA specifically, as well as other sports leagues, they're having a much more difficult time trying to capture the younger audience. And when I say younger audience, I'm talking about kids from anywhere around the age of, I would say, 6 years old all the way up until 18. They're struggling to retain that audience's attention because they have much more options on what to consume than previous generation of kids. And this is where we're seeing the rise of the streamers, the Kai Cenats, the iShow Speeds. The reason why they're getting the multi-million-dollar deals, because they're able to retain a lot of the attention from this demographic. And the NBA low-key had their cheat code, Ja Morant. When he was on his come up, the kids were attracted to him. They gravitated towards him. He was organic on social media, and he was the NBA's ticket to capturing that demographic. But a lot of the off-court incidents kind of knocked his star power down the pedestal.
No, I think it's a major issue, and something that you know, when it's as easy to watch on TV and kind of, you know, control the environment, it just strikes me that there would be more attention paid to affordability. And you have some of that with the leagues that have more games. You know, they have to do that, but you know, a property like the NFL or even MLS to some degree has really got you know, that demand that is just so there that they can kind of do whatever they want in terms of pricing.
And that demand for premium has even hit the tailgating. There's companies now that offer premium luxury services for tailgating. They'll set up the tent, they'll pre-make the food, they'll even offer Wi-Fi. So there's just a major gap on the options that previous generations had as far as convenience. And a lot of organizations as well as sports entities, they're adapting quick. But the real question is, will the gap in between those adaptations for them to actually monetize? Because the technology is not the only thing that's moving fast. People's habits, wants, and needs, and even expectations are all changing. Now, this is going to be a very unique segment I've been meaning to do for a while. Lately, we all been watching the NBA landscape change around, especially with them entering into a new lucrative television deal. And with that new deal, the NBA owners have slowly crafted out player movement, and it's been done very systematically. So in this segment, we're going to hear from quite a few different players throughout the years, as far as the NBA trying to limit their mobility, whether it be them just entering the league, all the way to all-star vets with more than 5 years experience. We're going to break this down layer by layer, and just looking at this season with Jonathan Kuminga and Cam Thomas, them realizing that there is no such thing as restricted free agency, just not necessarily having enough leverage to leave their teams. It's really pointing a grim reality that a lot of NBA rookies entering into the league are pretty much locked in for the first 7 years of their career to whatever team they get drafted by. Another example is Zion Williams and the way it's playing out with the Pelicans. He clearly does not want to be there, but of course he had to sign that extension and not risk the narrow window that he has to maximize his career earnings. Even the players that are just entering the league, like Ace Bailey, and the situation he had with the media overwhelmingly drawing negative attention about him trying to control where does he land. And for those of you that are watching the visual version, as you can see in 2024 and in 2025, the top teams in both years that have gotten to the lottery, they either have an influx already of so much talent being on the team, and the second scenario is that with the NBA changing their lottery rules, you have a lot of contending teams winning the top lottery spot in back-to-back years. The Philadelphia 76ers, despite having Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey, still ended up with the 3rd overall pick. And the Dallas Mavericks, after making the finals last season, now they have the ability to get Cooper Flag. So it's the weird energy the media had towards Ace Bailey and the fact that he was trying to direct himself to a team where he was going to have plenty of shot opportunities, as well as putting himself in the best position to gain a max rookie extension. In a way, he doesn't want to end up in a team like the Houston Rockets that have multiple lottery picks on the bench, Reed Shepherd and Jabari Smith Jr. And if you also look at the Houston Rockets, they were able to extend a lot of their younger guys for cheaper deals than what they would normally qualify for. Jalen Green as well as Şengün got extended on a discount, and Jabari Smith Jr. this very offseason was able to sign for a discount at $24 million a year. So Beasley was in the right for trying to control where he was going to go, but that's not the way the media narrative was drawn up about him when just a year prior, Bronny James and Klutch Sports did the same exact thing, and yet there was no noise made out of it. So in this segment, we're going to hear from a few players who gave their first-hand experience about the NBA trying to limit them when they first entered the league. Spencer Haywood in the 1970s, Chris Webber, as well as Jim Jackson in the 90s. And the Jim Jackson story will definitely surprise some of you because his agent at the time, Mark Termini, that is the guy that helped LeBron James as well as Rich Paul form Klutch Sports, and their overall blueprint is from his tactics. That whole aura of Klutch Sports is coming for their money, and no matter what, guys are still going to get paid. I.e. Ben Simmons after the fallout with the 76ers before they traded him. So we're going to break this slow, layer by layer, as the NBA historically have always been in a fight to control player movement, even after a 7-year lawsuit during the 1980s, just so guys can have free agency. So we're going to start off this segment with Chris Webber, as he spoke about how his agent lined him up with a very lucrative rookie deal that allowed him to opt out after the first year. In today's terms, that shit sounds crazy. Just imagine Cooper Flag having that option to leave Dallas after his rookie season. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I don't know if I've ever heard of a rookie of the year, winning rookie of the year, and then
traded.
So, our rookie year, they say, man, what we're gonna do is you're gonna sign the largest contract ever, but we're gonna give you an out after the first year. They said that It's a risk because if you get hurt, you'll have a whole guarantee because the option is yours. It's 5 years, $75 million at the time, 15 years, $75 million. So it's a great guarantee, but we really doing this so you can opt out. So I win Rookie of the Year, I opt out my contract. So I tell Shaq all the time, thank you, homie, because I used to get it quietly, just wait until Shaq re-upped. I could time my timing right after him. So a little bit of the beef with what Don Nelson had with me is because he felt I had too much control over money. Because I could, who Rookie of the Year this year? Anthony Edwards. Just imagine if they could sign a new deal and get Steph money after 1 year. That ain't right, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's what it was. I opted out my contract.
So just a few years after Chris Webber came into the league, the NBA in 1995 introduced the rookie scale extension, where they pretty much put a ceiling cap on how much money rookies can make, and they also gave teams leverage on those rookies by having the team option every single season, I believe after their second year until their fourth year, and if they didn't come to a long-term extension with their current teams, they would hit restricted free agency.
My contract, he went to the owners and said, listen, it's this kid, I'm telling you, he ain't supposed to be thinking like this, he only thinking about the money, blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to go back to Golden State bad. Like, my homies, Mullen, I moved to where Mully lived because I wanted to follow everything he did. Billy O took me to buy my first car. Like, I came home one time, my lights was out because I ain't know how to pay the bills. Billy O had to show me, you know what I'm saying? So these are my brothers, I want to be there. I only play for the Fab, I'm thinking everything's gonna be like this. And then, it was just the smear campaign, I know y'all know Love Nelly, he cool.
No, I had a similar situation.
Okay, because
we all have different, I have a similar situation with you, so.
Nelly, he did a lot for me as far as I didn't see the game the way he did. I didn't know it was gonna turn into today. And he allowed me to handle the ball and all that. But, when it comes to control and things like that, he gets nervous, and so he does things that fear do, push people away. And so I told the owners, I was like, please, I want to play here. They was like, nope. And then my agent was like, man, quick, what? You know you can go sign someplace a 1-year deal now? And I was like, okay. And my dumb ass went to the worst team in the league to go play with Juwan. Juwan ain't even know I was coming. I was just like, where'd Juwan get drafted to? I'm going over there. So that's how Golden State happened, man. I had to opt out after the first.
You signed a 1-year deal with the Bullets, or you signed a long-term? Or did you 1 year?
So no more in the NBA can you sign a long-term deal with the out after the first because of what my lawyer did, and you can no longer sign a 1-year deal because I signed 2 1-year deals with Washington, trying to wait to get out.
One thing you notice right there, as soon as he had all the leverage and power, the smear campaigns all of a sudden started happening. There's a lot of plans sprinkled through the NBA media. When they really speak, they speak for the owners. Later on in this segment, we're going to hear from Mark Termini, the guy that helped Rich Paul and LeBron James with the blueprint of Klutch Sports, how certain plants within the NBA media help push narratives that the owners want. For example, the first few days of free agency, especially in the mid-2010s, we used to always hear the narrative that teams are running out of money, that guys need to hurry up and get their deals done. But going back to Chris Webber, he also spoke about Spencer Haywood and some of the dealings he had with his rookie contract and how it basically set things up for guys like Kobe and Kevin Garnett to come into the league fresh out of high school.
So one class I really like is we talk about kind of fair trade. And fair trade, when you think about it, is because of Spencer Haywood. Spencer Haywood came out, he was poor. There was no term called hardship till he came out of Mississippi. His mother was picking cotton when he was in the league. And so he gets suspended, all this other stuff. He takes his court case to the Supreme Court. If he didn't do that, it wouldn't have been no Kobe, wouldn't have been no KG, it wouldn't have been other players. So just to let them know, like, you look at him as a basketball player again, because they try to dumb down a lot of things because you're an athlete or your sport. And I just want to know, I know you think this is about him coming out and getting out here early, but you really should see that because of what he...
They also dumb down the history, so a lot of guys don't even realize some of the things that they should be getting, it was already fought for. When you look at things like player movement, and also the ability for rookies to come into the league and have some sort of control of their careers, even if it's 2 to 3 years out. These issues have been fought over since the 1970s.
Yeah, players that came out early made $30 billion. So we talked to him about the fear he had. You know, he coming from Mississippi, can't, you know, do a lot of things other people could do, and he gonna take this stand for everybody else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I just want us to appreciate everybody had to do something to get us all to this point. For some people, it was be quiet. For some people, it was just study. For some
Everybody
people,
had
it
a
was
hand in
raise
it.
hell. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so with that, I'm just trying to make sure I bring up, you know, men and women athletes that have made an impact through protests. And now, you know, we talk about it.
Just sticking to Spencer Haywood, now we're going to hear directly from him, as well as the fruits of his labor, KG, who came fresh out of high school. Just like how Chris Webber just stated, a lot of the NBA teams colluded against Spencer Haywood and the Seattle Supersonics, signing him to a professional contract. The case went all the way up to the higher courts, where they ruled the NBA participated in a group boycott and it violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. It's crazy to think without this ruling, we could have never got Kobe Bryant coming out of high school. But you guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
19 years old, just turned 20. And so I went into the ownership and we said, look, they said, we're gonna give you a contract. So they gave me a fraudulent contract, a Bernie Madoff contract, where I was going to get my bulk of my money from age 50 to age 70, providing if I would stay with the company and drive trucks. I know. It's insane. So I get
That sounds like a Jim Crow deal there.
This was a Jim Crow deal for sure.
Super Jim Crow
and
deal.
it's going to get deeper. So
wow.
I said, well, oh my God, I didn't have an attorney. I was like just a young guy taking everything in and believing that they were going to take care of me. So I go get this lawyer. So Al Ross come in, he's my young Jewish lawyer. He come in, I'll straighten this shit out. You know, I got this. So we go into the office with the owners of the team, who are these truckers, the Denver Rockets, who are Rocket Service, which is the Denver Nuggets today. So we go in and we sit down and we're like, yeah, we like to straighten this contract up and we like to do this. So the owner sat there and he looked at us and he said, I tell you what I want you two sons of bitches to do. Spencer, you take your nigger ass out of here and take that Jew-ass lawyer with you. Get out of my office. You can't go back to college because you're ineligible. You can't go to the NBA because you're underclassmen, so you're stuck with me.
This is to Mr. Storm. That's what he said to you.
No, that Mr. Storm, Hannah Storm's dad, he was the agent who put us all together. This was J.W. Ringsby, who owned the Denver Rockets. And he owned a franchise here. So then Sam Schulman, who owned the Seattle Supersonics, and Jerry Colangelo, who owned the Phoenix Suns, they had the idea, we're going to, because the ABA was raiding the NBA with players, so he said, let's raid the ABA guys. Every time they get an MVP, we're gonna steal him and bring him to the NBA. But the one problem with me, they got Connie Hawkins to go to Phoenix, and then I was the next MVP, so I was underclassed still. I had one more year left. Sam Schulman said, you know, what are we going to do? And I said, I want to play. And Sam Schulman said, well, I'm going to teach you about Jewish loyalty. I'm going to put up the finance for your case all the way through. And I don't care how far it go, we're going to fight this. So I was like, great. So I filed suit and I signed with Seattle. They gave me a real contract. I filed suit for the rights to play in the NBA and against the NC2A, because the NC2A was under the banner like, you know, he's stealing they're gonna steal all of our economics and everything from players, because they're gonna go from college or high school to the pros, and we're not gonna make any money anymore. So that was a big deal. And so the NBA was like, we'll put up a good front, and because we don't want to like the public to be angry with the NBA. So they when I filed suit, they filed suit against me, and they jammed me for the first 10 games. I had to sit home and just practice and do this. And
Sit out. You had to sit out.
so the next 10 games I got in, they were like, the first game I got in, it was like, ladies and gentlemen, we have an illegal player on the floor, number
Damn.
24.
This how they did you?
Yeah, and I was like,
What?
I'm not illegal. I'm here.
The fuck?
And so.
On the mic?
On the mic. And so, and this game is being played under protest. So I played the game, and the game was under protest. So all of my first 10 games were under protest. Maybe it would count, and maybe not. And then they got an injunction again for another 10 games I had to sit out. Then the next 10 games, I got an injunction to play again. We get to Cincinnati, and they said, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, we got an injunction tonight. And they said, this injunction read, he must be outside of the grounds in which this arena sat on. So they put me out into the snow.
Oh, wow.
So I stayed out in the snow and I almost froze. And then I got on the bus and left and had another 10 games. Then I got another 10 games. Next time we were in Chicago, Chet Walker is warming up on the other end. And the owners of the Chicago Bulls said, act as if you got hurt. So Chet said, oh my God, my ankle is hurt. And so the next morning I get up and they sued me for $600,000.
Why?
Because he said he tripped on his ankle while I was warming up on the other end.
So they're playing all these games with you.
All kinds of games. So
wow.
The case maneuvered its way all the way to the Supreme Court. And when it got to the Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall was on the court. He was one of the justices on the court, and he kept saying, you know, it's ironic this case is not affecting tennis players, hockey players, baseball players, and he kept going on with different sports. And he said, now, ironically, it's only the 2 revenue sports in college that this rule is affecting. And so he said, you know, we're sending our soldiers to Vietnam at age 18. They're coming back maimed and hurt and sick and dying. But yet, you got a player whose mother is picking cotton in Silver City, Mississippi for $2 a day. My mother was at that time. But yet, he make all of this money for the Olympics. He made all of this money for the university. He made all of this money for the ABA, and yet he can't make a living in the NBA. And so that's when the justice got together and they said, they came back 7-2 in favor of me.
Oh, wow.
And that's when the case was over, March 1st, 1971.
Wow.
And then the next round was, let's go play. Because the union didn't support me, so I was out alone by myself doing this whole process. And so then we started playing, and we got to Milwaukee, and Kareem, where normally every team would go downstairs and stay downstairs and make me sweat upstairs by myself, and people throw bottles and stuff. These are real bottles back in those days, you know, not that plastic stuff. So I would like stand there, yeah, I'm the man, you know, and Kareem wouldn't go down. So we stood in the middle of the floor just kicking it, you know?
Wow.
And so everybody came up from the Bucks, and then we started playing.
Wow.
And that's when everybody said, damn, this guy's ready to play. And let's get ready for the young guys coming in because they are going to come. And then the NBA says, you know what? This is a great thing for us. Because now we have a chance to expand and grow. Because before they had 4 years of waiting outside, you know, after high school, you had to wait 4 years before you could come into the NBA.
That was to help college grow. They was growing the college game. College players never ever thought about having their own rights. Never ever thought about having anything. Didn't even know how to start negotiating or even start that conversation. We weren't equipped for that.
Right.
But yet they owned your rights for 4 years and they made money on you for 4 years. And how dare you ask for anything?
And
you're getting an education.
You not even ask for a hamburger.
Facts. Meanwhile, numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie.
And as we can see how it played out today, the numbers definitely don't lie in college sports with the lucrative NIL situations, and also even for the ladies. Going into the WNBA is questionable because the girls are making so much money while staying in college. But this exact case that Spencer Haywood had to go through opened things up for guys like KG and Kobe Bryant to come into the league. But again, initially that pushback that the NBA owners had, they still found a way to push that eligibility back, especially after LeBron James had came in the NBA in 2003. Had it not been for that, we would have seen guys like Greg Oden come out of high school and get into the league. And to add some more nuance to the other part of the conversation that they had about how 18-year-olds allowed the league to actually expand because it was a brand new talent pool coming in. We're seeing that play out today in the NBA. Now there's a more globalized talent pool coming into the league. We're always hearing about Vegas and Seattle possibly getting teams. And now the NBA has collaborated with the people over at FIBA, and they want to open up a new branch in Europe. Sometimes the league getting into unfamiliar waters, it opens up opportunities. And with the advent of streaming, having a globalized league doesn't sound too crazy. Don't be surprised if the NBA becomes an open league, very similar to international soccer leagues around the world, where the local club teams compete against each other. That's where all this is headed towards. But jumping right back to the topic of rookie deals, and perhaps the most infamous one with Jim Jackson, where he held out of his deal after joining the Mavericks in the early 90s. This situation was the most egregious to NBA owners, as they didn't like the fact that his agent, Mark Termini, the guy that will eventually help Rich Paul and LeBron James form Klutch Sports, not only getting his client paid after holding out, but also getting the exact terms that they initially wanted, and even dangling the possibility of taking the NBA to the Supreme Court. So there was a lot of ramifications from this scenario. Of course, a few years later in 1995, they introduced the rookie scale contract, capping how much money rookies can make, also putting a limit on the mobility of those players in order to move from team to team in their first few years in the league. Jim Jackson gives his perspective on the story. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
When I first got there, I was the first one. We already had an interim head coach. Donald Carter was the owner. Next year, they hired Quinn Buckner, first-time coach, Jamal's first year. Next year, they sell the team, okay? David McDavid buys the team. Jay Kidd gets drafted. Next year, they sell the team, another coach. So I had 3 owners, 4 coaches, and 5 years.
No continuity.
So no continuity, no stability up front in the front office. So how you think the product is going to deal with all of the change? Because you don't have anything that's set in stone. So yeah, as young guys, you needed direction, you needed stability, and we didn't have it as an organization.
Now keep in mind, with all that chaos, they wanted Jim Jackson as the 4th overall pick to accept the same payout that the number 8th pick got. So keep in mind that quick soliloquy of just the overall picture of what exactly ended up playing out. Now we're going to hear what he went through as he entered the league and tried to navigate his way into a rookie contract. He sat down and explained it perfectly to Paul George.
When you finally got a chance to get back into the game, you played 28 games, you said. How awkward was that situation going back into the locker room now after being drafted, and then you're coming in later into the season?
Well, it's funny because I never got a chance to be in Dallas, period. I got the press conference after I got drafted, and Donald Carter was the owner at the time. Norm Sandry was the general manager. But after that, I was back in Columbus, back in Ohio, training. So as we got closer to trying to get the deal done, nothing was getting done. So I was doing I never was there. So I never established a relationship with any of the players, the coaches, or anything. So basically, I'm running 5-on-5 at home, just trying to stay in shape. But here's the thing that I learned, man, about that time, and it was hard. It was extremely difficult because I'm 22 at the time, and your dream is to go play in the NBA. Okay, it's right there at your fingertips. The line is right there, but I can't get to the line. I'm close to I can't get over it because but I had to make a decision, and my agent was really good. Mark Termini was really good. He said, Jimmy, here is what's going on. Here's how it will affect you if you sign the deal they want down the line. Not just today, but how it affects you down the line and how it affects next year's fourth pick, which was Jamal Mashburn, because the market is thrown off. So I'm going to give you all these scenarios, but ultimately you got to be comfortable with what's going on, because they can come at me as an agent, but they going to come at you as a player. Are you going to be able? I said, man, I can handle it. I can handle the criticism. I can handle all the negative comments because I know I'm right. And if I know I'm right, I know I'm not trying to take advantage of the situation, I can sleep at night. So, bro, now, here's the caveat. The reason why I came in game 28 is because I was about to have a lawsuit against the NBA. So it's deep because it's a word called collusion. And what happened was, at the time, we found out that David Stern had talked to these owners about paying rookies these high, big-term contracts. You can't tell an owner what to pay. So we got wind of it.
Yeah.
This is yet another strike against the NBA with the collusion. Spencer Haywood, 1970, he took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won, with the league trying to collude against him with that quote-unquote term group boycott. But right here, it shows you structurally, behind the scenes, they do not want the players coming in to get paid a lot of money, and they also do not like player movement. So the NBA going into their new TV deal, we're seeing this play out in real time. We're going to see a lot less superstars becoming free agents, and player mobility now has been reduced to a bunch of middle tier players going from team to team.
Because there were some trade scenarios in which Dallas could have traded me. Then they didn't. So we got wind of it, went to the Players Association and said, we want to file this lawsuit against the NBA. So my deal at the time would have been, I got an offer from Cleveland, I think it was 6 years, 21, okay? If I won my lawsuit, Mavericks would owe me double. What do you think happened? I signed.
Yeah.
I signed.
So did they match it?
No. So they just came in with my original market rate, which was 7 years, 21, right
Got
under
it.
For the fourth.
right under for the fourth pick. Okay.
Got it. Okay.
So, but I got all my money in 28 games. See, this is why I tell people to be careful when you hear stuff in the news, like your negotiations. You know this firsthand with the Clippers. Things that were being said were sometimes not actually what the conversation in that room was. So you gotta be very careful when you regurgitate information that people are saying, because you don't know those intimate conversations that I had in the room with ownership, that in the public's eyes, they said, well, no, you got offered the Lakers, why you didn't? None of that stuff happened. But I knew inside what happened. Nobody knew about the lawsuit. Then I finally signed, and I'm with the Mavericks, and Quinn Buckner is there, and management is there, and everybody's patting me on the back, and we're so happy to have you. Man, what do you think I'm thinking? Real talk.
Right.
I'm in my mind, I'm like, man, I'll still be at home if I didn't have this lawsuit.
That's crazy.
So think about it. So now going into it, I have no training camp, no nothing. You know the first game we played against? Defending champs was the Houston Rockets. It was Akeem. It was Vernon Maxwell. It was Kenny Smith. It was my boy Sam Cassell. It was Robert Horry. That was my first game.
Yeah.
I had like 2 or 3 days of practice.
You heard all those sound effects when he mentioned Hakeem's name? All the grunts right there, because they know Hakeem's the real deal. And for some of you who don't know, if you go back through the footage, you'll see Hakeem was basically Giannis with a jump shot and crazy footwork in the post. As far as defense and athleticism, him and Giannis look the same out there. So at the end of the day, that's some scary shit.
Right.
Played, had signs in there, some boos, some cheers. Next game I played, we had 2 games at home. Phoenix Suns, Charles Barkley. We got Dan Martin, we got Kevin Johnson. Those are my first 2 introductory games in the league.
Awesome.
I did better from game to game.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that
awesome,
though. But it was the surreal moment was this, and I don't know what it was like for you the first time you got on the court. At least you got a chance to go through training camp, then go through preseason, and then play your first game. And none of that. I go from practice to put on a Mavericks uniform to walking out to boos and some cheers, playing against those guys. I mean, you talking about a head rush?
Yeah.
But I think my maturity at the time helped me handle what was coming at me. Because at the end of the day, once you get settled in, it's just basketball.
Right.
At the end of the day, even though I didn't have camp, you figure it out. And I got a chance to figure it out my rookie year. I mean, I averaged 17 points a game, and I had no training camp, had no nothing against those guys. But you figure it out. But you talking about a story, bro, that one right there, but it cost me, I think, a little bit long term because I fought the league.
Yeah.
But it was worth it long term for me to do it. So I wouldn't change it.
So that was in 92. You think that kind of had a part to do with them eventually coming to a rookie scale in 95?
Yeah, I do. Because when C-Webb signed the big deal, they was like, hold up. And I think right after that, Glenn Robinson did. Okay. And then it was KG that might have been the last one that did. But a lot of it too was through the union. Now, I'm part of the union. I was a VP of the union back in the day. It was preserving salaries and spots, kind of like what they did with the salary cap for rookies now, that veterans would still be able to earn.
100%. And also going back to KG, he was the last rookie to get that kind of deal. I believe he was making almost the same amount of money as Michael Jordan in the late 90s. He was getting around 30 mil a year back then. Unfortunate for Kobe, I don't think he was a high enough draft pick, and he really wasn't at his A game at the time to earn that kind of money. So he just barely missed out on that window. But it did close with KG, and in a way, even though the league earns about 10 times more money now, the figures for the rookie scales look very similar to what KG was making in the late 90s now. That's with inflation, with all the evaluations going up, with a brand new lucrative television deal. So it shows you the impact of these situations, the impact of these guys like Spencer Haywood going to court and fighting the league. Same thing for Jim Jackson right here, standing his ground, not willing to take the same salary as the 8th pick.
So that had a lot to do with it too. And again, back then you weren't making the TV money either.
Right. That's a whole new
So
thing
it was a
now.
little pushback from the vets that the rookies can come in and make this big money right away. Think about it. When I came in, bro, I was making $3 million a year. Michael Jordan was making 2.6. 2.6.
That's crazy.
That's real crazy.
On his deal. He
That's
got his
crazy.
big money on the back end when he got, 36 million. But at that time, Mike was making 2.6.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a dynamic the NBA will never, ever really experience anymore. Just the hunger that came out of the money being so limited. Guys were getting like 10 years, $10 million contracts. So the scarcity of shoe deals at the time, also the scarcity of money being given out to different players on the teams, it created that competitive environment that everyone kind of misses, that aura from the 90s, 80s, etc. That old school gridiron, hard-nosed energy that Charles Barkley and Shaq and all of them on the Inside NBA show tend to talk about.
You talking about globally. Why you think NBA is in China? Why you think they're in Brazil? Why you think they're in Africa? Why you think they're in India? Because market-wise, now that's a whole different TV market, okay? That's part of the CBA, but still, merchandise, all of that, the business of basketball. So if you got...
I got to add on to that. Think about the nuance of governments willing to throw money at these leagues to host these games. It could be a regular preseason game or even the All-Star game. The Middle East in particular, there's a lot of sovereign money being put into rebranding their image globally. They did it for the Qatar 2022 World Cup, and their relations with the NBA is continuing to expand. So be on the lookout for that.
NBC paying $2.2 billion, okay? You got ESPN paying $2.2 billion. Now you got Amazon paying $1.8 billion to the TV rights. That's not counting what they're getting overseas in Europe. That's not counting that. That's just domestically.
Yeah.
So as those numbers increase, the salary cap increases, players' salary is going to increase. Now you think franchises. Boston sells for $6 million. Well, $6 million. Lakers just sold for $10
billion.
Billion.
Yeah.
They said million.
No, billion. So Boston sold for $6 billion. So you think that somewhere, but the Lakers are so much more valuable, but not how much more valuable are they than the Celtics. It's who want to pay it. So you keep asking like, how big? We thought it was a big jump from when Mr. Ballmer bought it for $2.3 billion.
Yeah.
But that's a $4 billion difference between the Celtics. But I don't know. Did you think it'd be capped out one day?
I don't think so.
Hell no.
I don't think so. Because now I think we know enough that if the TV ratings are continuing to rise, like why won't the salaries rise, right? Like if we're all in for everybody making money here, owners is for sure making their money. Why can't we make ours too? You know what I mean? We growing the game. You know, I think the with the social media now, like the players have even more power with their brands. And what I'm trying to say, like with the social media, people like we can see what he's doing. We can see what they're doing. I think that was what was limiting the game back then, right? You got big personalities, you got MJ. Like just imagine if social media was present in MJ days, how much that would have drove the game that much more.
So last but not least, we're going to hear from Mark Termini, Jim Jackson's agent at the time, and the man who not only laid down the blueprint for Rich Paul and LeBron James's Klutch Sports, but he also helped them in that business venture. He gives great insight to the leverage of power that owners have, even to players that have a 1% talent around the world, to the power dynamic between owners and players within these contract negotiations. And surprisingly, even though these players have a 1% talent that you cannot find around the world, at times they are still intimidated during these negotiations to get their true value, and it's almost as if they negotiate from a weak position. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Again, I don't assign morality to anything that positively or negatively to money, tactics, good faith, bad faith. It's a game. And I've had guys tell me, Mark, stop playing games, or I'm not going to play games. It's like, really? Well, guess what? Life is a game. Negotiations are a game. I put that in the book too. If you don't want to play and somebody else wants to play, you're going to lose. And yeah, I'm playing a game and you're using your tactic. I'm not mad at you, but it's my job to recognize your tactic, to counter it, and to come up with my own tactics. If I told you the owners are great, we've got this deadline, whether it's a marketing deadline, I've heard religious holidays deadline, I've heard wedding deadlines, I've heard investment deadlines. And it's easy, especially if the agent and the player, and this is a very subliminal psychological trait that you guys will recognize as you see it, but maybe you've never really thought about it, where the agent and the player view themselves somewhat as inferior to the owner. The owner's a billionaire. These are very intimidating guys. The team is a very powerful institution. As one player told me that I highly respected him, but he was questioning a tactic. He goes, the man always wins. I'm like, well, not always. Not if somebody is skilled enough to exploit the needs or the weaknesses that the man has. I never accepted that. And I never went to the table with that. So that's where I came up with the axiom. I see too many people say, well, I've got to get this done by a certain day, whether it's because July 3rd, all my friends are going to ask me, why is my name not on the scroll at ESPN? And I have to educate that client, say, who cares? Why are you imposing an artificial, free agency doesn't end until November, hypothetically.
And the media also helps perpetuate that narrative. Again, in the mid-2010s, a lot of media members, especially coming out of ESPN, used to point out that guys would have to hurry up and get deals done before teams run out of money. It always sounded dumb, but they always alluded that this would end up being the situation.
So why are you imposing an artificial deadline? I have to get my contract done by the 3rd. I have to get my contract done. I'm going on my honeymoon. I've heard all of these. And you have to have enough stature and experience to tell the player, like, look, I don't care about your honeymoon or your cruise or your holiday or whatever it is. When the deal is done properly and it's ready to sign, that's when it'll be done. And you're going to be a lot happier for it, young man, because you're going to look back and laugh and say, wow, why would I sacrifice my position for this artificial deadline that I imposed on myself? And people do it all the time in business. They'll just say, well, I'll get back to you with an answer by Wednesday. And I ask them, well, why are you imposing that deadline on yourself? Why don't you just wait? Because you don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday. Something else might come into the equation that you can use. So that's where that comes from. Why it applies to many different areas across the decades of negotiations, but also outside of the NBA negotiations.
Again, we're hearing from Mark Termini, the guy who basically laid out the blueprint for Klutch Sports for Rich Paul as well as LeBron James to follow. And he has well over 30 years of experience dealing with NBA contract negotiations. And just seeing his mentality when dealing with the owners, just always understanding that there's always an angle that you could exploit, and they have deep pocketbooks, so why not put them in a position to pay? But he also spoke about how franchises leverage historical payments, just like how Jim Jackson spoke on earlier. Had he took that bad deal as the 4th overall pick, what's going to happen for the guys that would play behind him? And also, Chris Webber spoke about taking his one-year deals and how that would basically reset the market, thus forcing the owners having to pay rookies a lot larger piece of the pie. Mark Termini right here speaks about owners using that same exact historical context to even justify not giving guys like LeBron James the max, as he himself had to fight for LeBron James to get that sort of deal when he made his return to Cleveland back in 2014.
To educate the clients, because I'm the more experienced person and that's my area and that's what they're paying me for. And I found that when you take the time with any of those players, they may be relative levels of experience, they'll grasp what the strategy is. And if there's a certain amount of trust and respect, it's amazing the things you can accomplish. So we did that with all those players through those years. I did that with the players starting in the 80s. But as to LeBron, look, no team, and this is nothing negative towards the Cavs, they don't want their number one asset having that kind of freedom on a year-to-year basis. They still don't. So it had to be imposed upon them. And it was. And one of the points that I was very adamant about is making the point that LeBron had never had a max contract until I was in charge of negotiating his contracts. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody would say, before I represented LeBron, before I was doing his contracts, and it's still to this day about top players, people say anybody could represent, insert name, Michael Jordan, Wembanyama, LeBron James. And my response to that was like, really? Then why has he never gotten a max contract until I did his contract? So it must not be so automatic. So I took pride in that. And the other part was more global. And I felt like if my name is on it, he has to get what he should get, not because of Mark Termini, because who he is. And if LeBron James doesn't get a max contract, there's not going to be any more max contracts. Because if you know how teams work, they're going to come in, they're going to tell the next agent, hey, LeBron doesn't have a max contract. And they tried that with us in 2014. People say, well, I'm sure they just came and just offered you whatever you wanted. No, if I told you the video of this, or showed you the video of this, people that came to downtown Cleveland and they started out, well, we have this much cap room, multiple teams. A couple of them said right away, like, whatever you want. But a couple of them are very experienced guys, very competitive guys, and they're coming from a history where LeBron did not have a max contract. So that's another point I try to make. These guys don't just give you something. I'm always sensitive to when media members say, the Celtics gave Jaylen Brown this. Why is it they gave it to him? They didn't just give it to him, and certainly not with me. I forced them to do that, but it's always the team is on the high ground where they decide to give it.
That's right.
Well, they might have given it to me at the point of a gun, and you can say, call it all you want, but they didn't want to. So teams came in and said, we can give him whatever it was, $10 million under the max, $5 million. And I went to Holy Name High School. They had the nuns, and the nuns had a ruler. And when the nuns thought you were misbehaving, they said, put your hands out there, Mr. Termini, and then they would whack it with your fingers. So when these guys came in, I said, put your hands out there, okay? And I don't know what I grabbed, there's a couple guys that they had to take a little Catholic school pain. I said, it's going to be the max, okay? And then they quickly got to the max and stopped that discussion, and the word got out. But I had to make that point because he had never had that before. And the same thing, one of the points I make in the book is that these threads, some of them are old school, and people say, well, we want to hear about the 80s, 90s. I get it. But if you're smart, you will hear about those things and you'll listen to them, because those are merely issues and business principles that applied then, and they still apply. Doesn't mean you shoot the two-handed set shot. I'm not that guy. But I'm saying those traits, those characteristics, those business issues, you can see them still manifesting themselves today. You may not have the tools of holdouts the same way. You have a rookie scale now, but the psychology of representing the player with skill, with strength, finding leverage, evaluating it properly, being willing to use it, not evaluating or thinking you have more leverage than you do, but also not acting as if you don't have the leverage that you do have. Those are all principles that were applied by me in the 80s. And I see guys using them wisely now, the top agents, and I see other agents or team members not using them properly. And that's kind of what formulated a lot of what's in the book.
It goes to show you, no matter what era the NBA players are in, it's always going to be about what they could leverage. And if they came at LeBron James after 11 years of playing in the NBA and dominating, and still tippy-toe around the max because he never had it before, you could only imagine how they felt when they seen Chris Webber opt out of one-year rookie deals, Jim Jackson getting paid a large amount of money without even playing half his rookie season. The owners have never wanted to ever set the precedent that this will become the new standard. Just like when LeBron James, as a figurehead of the league, left his original organization in Cleveland and set the standard of guys taking control of where they want to go. That kind of leverage is still playing out today, because in this new CBA, they put a lot of restrictions and limits on player mobility. They don't want franchise guys walking away and those organizations getting nothing in return. So this was great insight on the business side of the game, and we got great perspective from multiple eras of the league and the outcomes of those events, how they affected the league going down the line. But hey, it is what it is. You guys definitely hit up the link in the description below. Check out the playlist. We got more NBA stories just like this, and also some game film along with the storytelling. And until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.